Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas, and this is the Ultimate Unity tutorial, and welcome to episode 6. So this time we're going to take a look at some more UI elements and create a dynamic cursor. And this is going to occur by integrating our Raycast script, which we used last time. Now, what we're going to start off with is creating some more UI elements onto the screen. So if we go to Game Object, go to UI, and let's start off with text. If we double click our text here and zoom our camera out, pan it around this way. So I've just done that by holding the middle mouse button and just bringing it this way. And we can see new text here is this text object within the canvas. So I'm going to anchor it into the middle, and I'm going to zero out the position on the X and the Y. And again, if we double click, we can center it, and it is now dead center of our screen. Now, ideally, I want it to appear a bit below center because the center is where our cursor is. So we just need to drag it down a little, about there. And this is going to be what I'm going to call an action key or action text. And essentially what it is a description on screen of what key we need to press to do certain things. And obviously it's not going to be on screen all the time, so we're going to be turning it on and off depending on what we're doing in the game. So I'm going to do this by representing a square bracket by the letter E and another square bracket. Let's change it to white, so we can select the color here, change to white, and I'm going to have it alignment center. I think I'll increase the font size as well to something a bit bigger. Let's try 24. And I'm going to press play and see how that looks. So, looks like I probably need to move it down just a little more because we can see the dot in the center is going to be the middle of our cursor, but we're also going to add a few extra cursor elements. So I'm going to bring this down just a little. Now there are other things we can do here. We have font. We're not going to deal with font at the moment, but we will be dealing with font pretty soon, I think, because obviously depending on what font style we want, it can have a different impact on the game. You can change the font style if you want to, bold, and italic. Line spacing, if you want it rich text, different alignments. You got different things to play around with. And obviously you can change the alpha, high, low. Full alpha is completely opaque. Obviously 0 alpha means it is completely transparent, and everything in between is translucency. I'm going to keep it 255. Next thing I'm going to do is right click and rename, and I'm going to call this action. I'll just put action display. Hold control, press D, duplicate, and I'm going to bring it downwards to about there. But what we can do, make things a bit easier, is if we select this tool here, the rect tool, we can actually drag this down and you can see it kind of snaps to different objects, which is very handy because as I've brought it down here, you'll see it snaps to this object to kind of neatly align everything. I'm going to expand this object. About there, I think. Make sure it's back center. Now this is going to be our action text. So for example, this will say pick up gem. So I'm going to right click, rename, and just call it action text. And I'm actually going to type in here, take gem. I might actually have it slightly grey, just to kind of give it a different color towards the E, so we can see differential between the two. Now what I'm going to do is select the first one, hold control, select the second one, and turn them both off up here because I don't want them active at the moment. So next thing we're going to do is going to be the same sort of thing, but we're going to create some extra little bits around the cursor. So game object, UI, and we'll go raw image. Let's zoom in a touch, and I'm going to zero out the position. Width, let's have as 2. Height, let's have as 4. Maybe that's still, yeah, I don't think that's quite going to do the trick. Let's have Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of some good figures we can have here. So we can see how much of an impact this is having on our dot. So that's the dot. So we've got to aim for this to be roughly bigger than it going around, but I want to create like a square going around it. So width, let's have it as 2 again. And height, yeah, we'll keep as 10. So I'm going to have that about there. And right click, rename, and have it UI curse 01. Hold Control, press D to duplicate, bring it over this way to about there. Right click, rename, have that as 2. And you probably guessed it, I'm going to do the same, put up above, hold Control, press D, bring it into the center. I'm going to rotate by 90, oops, sorry, it should be on the Z, 90 degrees. Bring it up to about there. And same down there. So mine isn't perfect, but you can see the idea of what's happening here. Whenever the mouse cursor is over a screen, I want them extra cursors to appear. So it's entirely up to you how you want to work with this. I mean, essentially, it's not too important, but it just adds that little extra detail to the game. So I'm going to have that roughly about there. Let's finish renaming them. So 3 and 4. Now, next thing I'm going to do is within the canvas itself, right click, create empty. Then right click on that empty game object, rename, and put extra cursor. And then I'm going to put those 4 elements into that extra cursor. And then make sure extra cursor, the actual object is selected, and turn it off. So now we have all the extra UI elements that we need to play with. And obviously, if you want to take your time creating these cursor bits, please do. I've just done this quick to get the tutorial moving along. You take as much time as you actually need to make it look decent. So what we're going to do now is create a script, which instead of collecting our gem, so at the moment we can walk into it because we have an on-trigger enter script attached to it. We're actually going to be able to look at it and pick it up. So to do that, let's head to our scripts folder. Right click, create, C# script, and I'll put collect gem. Open it up in Visual Studio. And the way we're going to do this is going to be different from the other scripts in the sense that these other ones are fairly simple, especially this first gem rotate. The player casting has statistics, or a variable I should say, within it, which we need to reference within this script. If you remember, that's why we have the word static in our variable distance from target. So the first thing we're going to want to do here is at the very top in our namespace section, because we're going to be using UI elements here, or rather we will be at a later date, because obviously this text here is not always going to say take gem. It can say different things, but it's always wise to have a namespace referencing the UI. And to do that, we do using Unity engine.ui. That just allows us to use UI components with any objects that we state within the script. So to do this now, what we need to do is get rid of void start and any notes. We don't need them at all. And we're going to need to set about 6 variables here. So the first one, public, is going to be a float because that's a decimal number, and we're going to call it the distance. And this is going to be the actual distance, which is from our player casting script. So this one here. So before we carry on with any other variables, let's get the distance actually working within the script. So the distance, and this is in the void update, equals player casting, which is that script which has the Raycast in it, dot distance from target, semicolon, which is this one right here. So because it's a static, variable, we can reference it within different scripts. So we have our first variable sorted, so let's carry on with the rest. So we're obviously going to have the two text objects that we've created, which is the display and the text itself. So public game object, and it's going to be action display, and then public game object action text. Now, next thing we need to do is create the extra cursor. So we need an object around there. There's no N in object. So we need to define one for the cursor itself, so them extra little bits around it. Public game object, and I'll just call it extra cursor, semicolon. Next is going to be the gem itself. Now, we don't necessarily need to reference it as a variable, but I feel at this point, because we are beginners, we can see what's actually going on with the script if we do reference the gem itself, because the script is going to be attached to that object, but having it referenced as the gem helps us see what's going on with the script. So public game object, and I will literally call it the gem. And the final thing I want to do is that collect audio effect that we imported, was it last time or time before? So public audio source and collect sound, semicolon. So that's all we need in void update. Everything we do, or rather most of what we do now, is going to be within on mouse over. So to do that, we go void on mouse over. Doesn't need to be private, so we can get rid of that. Now, what this means is that whenever the mouse hovers over anything which this script is attached to, everything we put in here will happen. Now, because we don't want things to happen as soon as we move the mouse over it, wherever we are, we need to check if our distance is, let's say, less than 3 maybe, or equal to 3. 3 is a pretty good number to have as a distance between ourselves and an object. So if the distance is less than or equal to 3, close bracket, open curly bracket, then we do the following. So if it is less than 3, then we need to have action display dot set active true. We need action text dot set active true, and we also need the extra cursor dot set active true, semicolon. We also need an else statement with this. Now, what this means is that if this condition is true, then do the following. If it isn't true, so else, do the complete opposite. So we can literally copy this, all these lines of code here, put them in the else statement and change true to false. So it's kind of a sequence of events here, depending on what's happening in the game. If we are looking at it, then this happens. If we aren't, then this happens. So I like to have this if statement completely separate to what we're going to do next. And what we're going to do next is set up an action key. So if we go back to Unity, go to Edit, Project Settings, and Input, you'll see this word axis with an arrow next to it. Click that, and we can see we can see 18 different functions here. Now, what this means is that for each one of these functions, it's set a different positive button. So what that means is, for example, fire 1 is set as joystick button 0. Up here, we have the exact same one, which is also left control or mouse 0. So both of these refer to the same thing because they have the same name, which means that for fire 1 to be activated, we either have to press left control, mouse 0, which is the left mouse button, or joystick button 0. Another example would be cancel, for example. If we want to invoke the name cancel, we would just press escape or joystick button 1. So we're going to create a new one here. So we're going to put size 19, hit enter, click this duplicate because all it does is just duplicates the last one. And instead of the name cancel, let's put the name action. And let's get rid of the alternative positive button there because we don't need that. But the positive button is going to be E. So we want to be able to press E to pick up this gem. If you want to use a different key like P or K or whatever you want, you would have your positive button there and you would name whatever you want here. Remember this name here because it's important in the next step. Once we've done that, head back to our script, and what we need to do is check if we're pressing that button. So if, in brackets, input dot get button down, in brackets and quotes, the name of that button, action, open curly bracket. So if we're pressing the action button, we then need to check if the distance is less than 3 or equal to 3. If the distance is less than or equal to 3, then do the following. So yes, we're close enough. Yes, we're pressing the action button. Let's collect this gem. And what we'll need to do is play the sound and then basically get rid of the gem itself. So let's start with collect sound dot play, open close bracket, semicolon, action display dot set active false, because don't forget we've collected it now, it's disappeared, so we need to turn off our action display. Same applies for the action text, the extra cursor, and we can probably copy this here. So we're kind of cheating here. And that's all there really is to it in that section. If we go to our close curly brackets, we can see all these are closing. So this one here closes the method on mouse over. Now obviously we also have to have one which is whenever the mouse moves off the object. And it has to be this again, we turn everything off. So the method is void on mouse exit. It doesn't need to be private, so we can get rid of that. And we can copy these lines of code. Just make sure we have that right there. So everything needs to be within the brackets. So we can turn these off. So copy them, put them in the void on mouse exit method, and save the script. So now let's head back to Unity. You can see it in the bottom right corner, thinking, and we have no errors, because if we did, it would show down here. So now let's attach this collect gem to the gem itself. But first, let's get rid of the... do we need to get rid of gem rotate? Yes, I think what I will do is I will actually annotate out this method of on trigger enter because we don't want it. So I'm going to put double slashes. What that means is that those lines of code will not be executed at all. So let's resave that script. That's the gem rotate script. And let's attach the collect gem. So drag and drop. And let's set those variables. So action display, action text, extra cursor, the gem itself, and then the collect sound, which is attached to our first person controller, sounds, effects, and ding 001. So now let's press play. So we can see that we still only have the cursor on the screen. And as we get closer to the gem, we can see take gem. We look away, it disappears. So you can see the process of what's happening here. And every time we look at the gem itself, we have the option to take the gem. When we look away, it disappears. And now let's see if it works. So yeah, we can see that it does actually work every time. The one thing we've forgotten to do is actually remove the gem itself. And all we do to do that is here, once we've got the action button, less than 3, we've played our sound, the gem.set active false, semicolon, resave, head to Unity, press play, and now we can see perfect. So that's how we can use Raycast to integrate and use a UI to see actions within the screen. Now we're going to delve into that even more during development in this series because it becomes vital to the game itself. But for now, this'll do. Feel free to work on it as much as you need to. Next episode, we're going to look at a weapon, we're going to look at animating it, and we're going to look at a script which will allow us to, for example, click the mouse button and swing the weapon. So until then, guys, thank you very much for watching.